So Fulbright Finland Foundation is an independent, not-for-profit foundation here in Helsinki. So we are a Finnish foundation, and what we specialize in is cultural and academic exchanges between Finland and the US. We provide advising and training. First of all, when we talk about our grantees, we talk about that they are citizen diplomats or representatives of their home country in, like Finns in the US and Americans in Finland. And we are looking for those who are interested in becoming citizen diplomats, ambassadors, people-to-people diplomacy and ambassadorial qualities is something that we are looking from our applicants. They are bridge builders between Finland and the US. And because of this nature of the program, we also interview all of our candidates. And another unique feature of the programs that the Fulbright Finland Foundation offers is that we are looking for those who have interest and motivation to contribute to the foundation's mission, which is together shaping the future, and to be a driving force of change in different sectors of society and academia in the future. So making a wide impact. Sarah, are you able to change the slides?
Did you try the clicker?
Yeah, but it didn't work. Okay.
There's too many things.
Okay, thank you. That's good.
Yeah.
And then third distinction that we want to point out is that our grant programs, they include a lot of different types of support services. So it's not only the monetary aspect that there is, but you also get a lot of support in preparing for instance, your studies in the US and applying for the visa and when you look for accommodation and these type of matters. So we support our grantees in these different tasks. And then we also provide alumni activities, and our alumni are involved in pretty much everything we do. And they also have, or they support our grantees on the US side. There's a welcome network provided for the Finnish grantees in the US, and it consists of US grantees who have been in Finland earlier, and now they are in the US back and want to support Finns going to the US. So that's one example of the alumni support that also comes in this program. And Sarah, then we could go to the undergraduate program that the Fulbright Finland Foundation provides. This is for those who are interested in doing a full bachelor's degree in the US, the entire degree, or if you are a student in a Finnish university and you would like to do an exchange semester or year in the US, so you could apply to this program. And for this program, applicants must have a good funding plan for their studies when they apply. Typically, degree students receive funding from the US institution, and this is particularly for those who have received a very good funding package from US institution. And then the funding part that comes from the Fulbright Finland program is a small addition to that. But then in addition, like mentioned, there comes all the support services and networking opportunities that the foundation provides. And the ambassadorial role that is part of also this undergraduate program. There are examples what as an ambassador the student could do on the US side. For example, talk to the US students about study opportunities in Finland and the grant programs the foundation provides for US students to come to Finland. We provide this type of material for the grantees who have participated in the undergraduate program so that they can share this information while they're in the US. But these are just examples of ways you can act as ambassador. When you come back to Finland, if you've been on this program, you could also then join, for instance, this type of information session that we have today and share your experiences, like now Maria is today doing and telling you about her experiences. Then shortly about the if Sari, you can, yeah, there we have all these different benefits that comes in this program that has been already mentioned. Next, we can go to the partnership award that we have with Vanderbilt University. We've had it for 12 years already. This is a great opportunity for Finnish students to do entire bachelor's degree at Vanderbilt University. There's a two-part application process. You first apply to Vanderbilt University and the scholarships they provide, and then if you are accepted, then you could apply to the Fulbright Finland Foundation. Few pointers about the US higher education. There's about 4,000 colleges and universities to choose from, so there's a lot of different opportunities. Expert faculty and world top researchers and research opportunities often also provided for students. One unique feature is that you don't need to choose your major when you enter the bachelor's program. Typically it's done after 2 years, so you have some time to think about what you want to major in. The population is diverse. You get to learn from different world views. So there's a lot of international students often in classroom, also in US universities. And the campus life is unique. It's a really like a this kind of comprehensive experience a little bit. If you compare it to the Finnish university life, it's quite different. There's a lot of that comes in addition to the studies. Typically, the students can live on campus, and there's different activities provided for the students. And there's also good support services for international students in US universities. Here are then, if we go to the next slide, the kind of 5 key steps in nutshell that are important to take when you are planning studies in the US. First of all, there's the research, your options. As mentioned, there are a lot of different universities, so it requires some time and work to do the research, to look into those that most interest you and find the most interesting options for you. Then it's important to make a good financial plan. You can apply funding from the US institution, gather and plan all the ways you are going to fund your study. So it's important to have a realistic funding plan, and then you apply to the university. You could also utilize in this phase the Fulbright Finland outreach ambassadors that we have. We have a list of grantees who have been students in the US or are currently their students, and they are interested in supporting new applicants who want to go and study in the US. So those are also a good resource in that stage. And then is the visa application phase. So you need to apply for student visa to go to the US, and typically there's an interview for the visa at the US Embassy in Helsinki. And then comes the time when after that, when you start preparing the latest your stay in the US. So all the different matters, such as looking for accommodation, arranging insurance, and thinking about this type of matters, practical matters. As a little bit already mentioned earlier, US universities provide also funding for their degree students, so it's important to look into those if they are merit-based scholarships, sports scholarships, or need-based aid that the universities might provide. Some universities might provide very hefty packages for your studies. Like here's a list of those institutions that are called need-blind admission institution, where which means that the applicants are evaluated without consideration of their family's ability to pay tuition fees. And the university also provides the student full need financial aid to all students, including international applicants. Then there are the need-aware admissions, which means that the student's own ability to pay is taken into account in the admission process. But also these type of institutions can provide generous financial aid packages even though it would not be like a Fulbright, but the universities can still provide you very good funding packages. And then it's also good to remember to find out what you can get from the Finnish Social Security Institution, Kela, student aid for studies abroad, and then there are these other foundations, organizations that you can look into for collecting your funding, such as the Fulbright Finland Foundation, and then people have their own savings or support from the parents, for instance, when they are putting together their funding package. But let me now finish here and let Shane to continue with her talk about Vanderbilt's opportunities.
Great. Well, so my name is Shane McGuire. As you mentioned earlier, one of the senior associate directors at Vanderbilt. Been there for a little over 10 years now, and this is probably my third time to Finland. So excited to be here and kind of tell you a little bit about, just sort of as an example. She kind of gave a high level overview of sort of life in the U.S. at U.S. University, but give you more of a glimpse of what it's like to be at Vanderbilt for the academic side of things, as well as sort of the student life. We'll talk a little bit about sort of U.S. admissions as well, kind of what we look for, and then the funding opportunities. And then I'll save a lot of the student part for Maria because she's actually living the experience. She's done some really great things during her time. She's taken really full advantage of sort of the Fulbright Finland partnership. And so she'll join at some point, just kind of give that glimpse as well. So yeah, I'm gonna go to that sort of next slide. This is kind of the framework as I think about sort of the student body, the community at Vanderbilt. It's really built around these three big things. And really it's all about sort of collaboration. This is a very competitive institution to get into. And technically in sort of the higher education landscape in the United States, it falls in that highly selective group. But what I appreciate is students on campus really are collaborating, they're working together, it has that great community feel. They really are all about celebrating each other's successes. So I appreciate it's not a competitive sort of cutthroat environment that you find on campus. We're very intentional about creating a community that very much reflects the global world that we're a part of. We want students from all across the United States, all across the world, coming together in one place, learning from each other. And our faculty do a really nice job of building these classroom discussions around civil discourse, around having those conversations. And we want you to be sitting across the table from someone who might think differently than you and who may challenge those perspectives, but really kind of learning from each other. And we also want you to have that balanced experience. That's a big part of that is, yes, you're getting the academics, you're getting that sort of specialty in whatever field that you might be looking at, but we also want you to plug into that community. We want you to have that student life aspect as well. And Vanderbilt puts a lot of focus on sort of the leadership, the development, the community that happens outside the classroom as well. So our students do a really nice job of sort of balancing that as well. If you happen to be a Latin scholar, there you go. There's our motto there. It's really all about sort of pushing you to grow as a student, both in and outside the classroom. That is sort of what that university experience is really sort of built around. The next slide kind of shows you a little bit about sort of the enrollment there, kind of what that looks like. If you are looking at universities across the United States, we kind of fall really nicely into that medium-sized category. It's a little over 7,000 undergraduates. You're getting close to like 14,000 with sort of the graduate professional students. So really nice in sort of that sweet spot of where it's a big enough community where you have, a lot going on. You've got research, you've got sort of the big university sports that you hear about in the United States. But you still have the smaller classes, a community where you're going to recognize or know most people, the access to faculty. It kind of brings those worlds together very, very well. And this kind of our current sort of international representation on campus across the 4 years, it's a little over 11%. That's been increasing quite a bit. Last year's class that just showed up was just shy of 13%. I think the class we're aiming for this fall will likely be close to 14% as we continue to see a lot of interest across the world coming to campus. And I've been very excited to see the citizenship representation go up. I think this year will probably be over 100 citizenships sort of represented in that undergraduate student body. On the next slide, kind of giving you an idea of a little geography lesson as it comes to the United States, kind of understanding where we're positioned in the US. I know a lot of times when you look at the United States, you may be very familiar with, the West Coast cities, some of those East Coast cities that you may fly into if you were to come over to the US. So Nashville is kind of more in the southeast part of the United States. It's a part of the country that's known for being very welcoming, very friendly. It also gets a really nice mix of all four seasons, much more mild winters than you have here in Finland by far. We get about an inch or two of snow or just a little bit of snow, and the city sort of ceases to function, so we don't handle that super well. We have like one snow plow for like the whole city of Nashville. So it's funny, like students coming from colder climates will laugh a little bit about sort of how we handle the snow, but it's also a medium-sized city in terms of sort of US standards. So it's about 2 million people. It is the fastest growing city in the United States, so there's a lot of energy and excitement about being kind of right there in this vibrant, growing city. And Vanderbilt is about 1.5 miles or 3 kilometers from the center of downtown, so considered an urban campus. You are right in the heart of the city, and the city has kind of really grown up around Vanderbilt. But the nice thing is when you're on our campus, you could very easily forget that you're in a city. It feels like you're walking around a park. It's technically a national arboretum. The fun fact I always talk about is the squirrel to student ratio. We have a 3-to-1 squirrel to student ratio. So there's your fun fact to remember, but it does have that park-like campus, but situated in the heart of the city. And on that next slide, we'll tell you a little bit more about sort of the city of Nashville, the opportunities that are available for our students, particularly when it comes to internships. And these are just a handful of sort of the major companies and corporations that have headquarters in Nashville or regional offices in Nashville. About 3/4 of our students will do some sort of internship, some sort of professional experience during their time there. It doesn't have to be in Nashville, but it's nice to know you have a ton of options in finance and business, engineering, medicine, law, education, all of these opportunities right there in the city of Nashville. The thing that Nashville is probably known for the best across the world is the live music scene. We are considered Music City USA is one of our nicknames, or the country music capital of the world. I will tell you, it is not a requirement to like country music to be in Nashville. I am not a big country music fan. In fact, I kind of don't particularly love it. And I've been in Nashville, I've been to tons of amazing concerts, 0 of which have been country. But the great thing is there's any artist across the world that is coming to the United States, they're doing a tour, they will almost certainly come to the city of Nashville. There's some really amazing performing arts venues throughout the city. Our campus actually is a concert venue. We do a couple big concert series on our campus every year. So if you like sort of the live music scene, it is really happening around the city of Nashville. We also have a great sports scene on campus and off campus as well. In the city of Nashville, you have a professional hockey team, you have a minor league baseball team, you have an American football team, and you also have a real football team as well in the city. So you have the opportunity to sort of go out and take advantage of the professional sports. You also have sort of the collegiate athletics on campus as well. You have a lot of school spirit around that. It's also a fantastic city for food. I could spend the rest of our time probably talking about the food scene in Nashville. But just within walking distance of campus, you have about 70 to 80 cafes, coffee shops, restaurants. I know coffee is big in Finnish culture. There's plenty of great coffee right around campus as well. And the meal plan that you have as a student, it works at all the eateries on campus, but it also works at about 30 locations off campus. So it does allow you to get out in the city, use that meal plan that you would have as a student to sort of explore the scene in Nashville as well. Bringing you back to campus on the next slide, I'll talk a little about sort of the academic piece, what that sort of looks like there. So we are a university, which means we also have like these schools that sort of live within this larger university. There are actually 4 undergraduate schools. So when you apply to Vanderbilt, you're not just applying to the university, you would actually apply to one of these 4 schools because you need to have a home somewhere within that university. The great thing is because of the size, you can take classes in any of these 4 schools. You can double major across schools, do major minor combinations. So the great thing is the whole curriculum is open to you as a student. So again, you can explore within that, but you are picking one of these as that sort of home base. The biggest of these 4 is going to be that College of Arts and Science. It sort of embraces that liberal arts sort of idea that you hear about in the US, where you can really kind of show up on day one, not necessarily have any idea what you want to study, you have those first couple years to explore, to try out things before you declare that sort of major or that area of interest you're gonna focus in, still get that degree done in that 4-year period. I like to compare everything to food. So in some ways, the College of Arts and Science is sort of like this beautiful buffet that you go to. You go through it, the line once, right? You kind of try a little bit of everything to see what's out there. And then when you go back for more, you kind of go back into the areas that you really love. And that's kind of what you're doing when you decide on sort of that major that you might do. And we have a lot of students that will double major. It's very, very easy to do. The curriculum is incredibly flexible. So sometimes students have more than one interest, and they'll be able to do a double major or do a major in a couple of different minors. So you have a lot of flexibility. So if you're getting to that time of application and you're like, I have a ton of different interests, or I'm not quite sure what I want to do, that is really a great place to sort of look. These other 3 schools are going to be a little more specialized in terms of what they do. So we do have that School of Engineering. That's also where we currently house our computer science program as well. We also have a new school that is going to be growing out of this school. So here soon, I'll actually be talking about 5 schools, but right now it sort of lives within that. It's called the College of Connected Computing. And it's taking all these different fields around AI, machine learning, data science, which we kind of have classes in, or we have minors in right now. And as this school grows out of that, we will probably have full-fledged majors and programs there. Obviously, that is a big area of interest for a lot of students. There's a lot of developing stuff happening there. So excited to kind of see that growing out of that school. And when it does officially have its own standalone computer science major, will also kind of move into that school as well. If you apply to the School of Engineering, you need to know, hey, I want to be an engineer, or I want to do computer science, but you actually have the first year to kind of decide on which area you're actually really going to focus in there. And then these other 2 schools, you're actually applying directly to a major. So I've got the School of Education, which has sort of all the teaching degrees for early childhood, elementary, secondary education, special education. It also has some really fascinating psychology-related programs around child development, child studies, cognitive studies. It also houses one of our most popular majors, which we call Human and Organizational Development, which is kind of a unique title, but it's basically thinking about organizational leadership and dynamics, how you might manage people in an organization, how you might set up sort of leadership within an organization. And it's a very versatile major. So we see students take that and get into business, get into law, get into education. They apply it to a lot of different arenas. And then, of course, being in Music City, USA, we have to have a school of music. This is going to be very, very classically focused. They do have some majors and concentrations in jazz as well. So you can obviously apply to that school if you're going to be a musician or looking at doing composition. But we also have a lot of students who take classes over there just for fun, right? Maybe you want to go take the history of rock and roll or the history of country music as an elective credit because that sounds fun and interesting. You can do that. And that again goes back to just the flexibility that you have as a student to kind of explore a variety of different fields while you're there. On the next slide, it kind of talks a little bit about sort of experiences that extend beyond the classroom that are still sort of in that academic space there. We very much want you, yes, to have the classroom experience, but also to have the experiential learning outside the classroom. And that could be doing research. We are a huge research university. We're technically in this Research 1 category, which means we get some of the top funding in the United States to do research. And it's not just reserved for our graduate and professional and PhD students. Our undergraduates absolutely dive into that. So as you're working through your bachelor's degree, if you have interest in doing research, you're looking at about a little over half our students that will do research. Some of them end up on publications with faculty. And I know a lot of times when you think about research, you may think about just science, but it is happening in the humanities, social sciences. It really happens in every different field. That's really what it means when you're at sort of a Research 1 university. At the same time, you have really fantastic access to your faculty as well. So this, again, is kind of how we embrace that sort of medium size that, yes, you have the big research, you have the larger community, but you still have this kind of 7-to-1 student to faculty ratio. 90% of your classes have 50 or fewer students in them. It's about 80% that have 30 or fewer. So you're typically in these smaller, more discussion-based classes where you can have that access to faculty. They all hold office hours. So if you have individual questions for them outside of class, you can work with them directly. Many of them also live in the residence halls alongside students. So we actually, first of all, are going to keep you on campus. All 4 years, we see the value in sort of the 4-year residential experience. But as part of that first year experience, we actually have 10 houses or kind of residence halls all on this area of campus together. And there's a faculty member that lives in each of those. So you kind of have that access to faculty in a different space than just the classroom or just their office. You kind of see them in the student life side of things as well. And I think it really helps kind of bridge that academic and student life. And they really sort of help set sort of the culture and tone for each of those houses. So it's kind of a fun part of that first year experience. We also have some faculty that live alongside upperclassmen as well. So again, you have that ability to get to know faculty kind of in a different type of space there. And then the next slide, I think it'll talk a bit about sort of things that are going on in our community. You know, what's available to students? What are you going to find in that community? This kind of goes and represents that balance piece that I was talking about. I mean, you've got 450 student organizations. That number is growing all the time as students bring different ideas to campus. So it's changing. There's always lots of cultural organizations as well. These are some of the community centers that you will find on campus. There's a lot of great support for international students, the International Student and Scholars Office. That's a really important office that will help you, particularly with sort of the visa process, and also helping kind of get you to campus, getting you moved in. They help run the international student orientation that we have. We actually have international students arrive a couple of days early, partially to help with the jet lag. That's important, but also just to kind of get you acclimated, kind of get to know all the other international students before you kind of roll into that general orientation that happens for every student. That will be part of that sort of process as well. We also have what we call I-Leads, which are upper class international students that kind of serve as like mentors and student orientation leaders during that process, as well as through sort of that first semester as you're transitioning and sort of finding that place on campus. But really at the end of the day, and this, I think this fourth one down, this sort of center of belonging in communities, that's really at the heart of all of this. And it's something we want for every single student. We want you to find that sense of community, that sense of belonging on campus. That really is sort of important during those sort of 4 years as well. And then you've got a lot going on again in the athletic space. You have 17 varsity teams. You've got club sports, which are kind of competitive, but they're not sort of getting the full scholarship piece that you might as a recruited athlete, but still competing against other schools. And you have intramurals as well, which is going to be just more for fun against your fellow classmates, fellow peers that happens on campus as well. So a lot of different things to plug into, again, finding that community on campus. And I think the next slide will maybe talk about some of the fun admissions related stuff. So again, kind of give you a sense of what that looks like, what we're evaluating in the application. So when you apply to the United States, a lot of schools employ this, what we call holistic admissions process, meaning we are looking at more than just the academics. We're going to be, yes, the academics are important. They are going to set the foundation for that application because we do not want to admit a student that we don't think could handle the academics, could handle the rigor on our campus. But honestly, probably 3/4 of our pool could do the work on campus. So we really also have to differentiate and understand all these other nuances there. So I will quickly kind of walk through how we evaluate each of these, starting with that academic achievement. Now, a lot of times when students look at the US, they hear this sort of GPA term. That's a very American term in terms of sort of how we do grades, how we evaluate students. When we're looking at international students, obviously there's all sorts of different scales in curriculums. Some don't give grades in the traditional way that the US thinks about it, don't have GPAs, and that's perfectly fine. That is our job, is to understand the nuances of your curriculum, what is offered at your high school, and how is that sort of preparing you for life at university. That could be an IB curriculum, that could be a national Finnish curriculum, that could be Cambridge. I mean, there's all sorts of curriculums around the world, and it's our job to understand the differences in those, and then how you sort of fit into that curriculum and how it's preparing you for that. So that's why I talk about it as really the academic achievement that is sort of there. And then there's also these lovely standardized test scores that you may hear about, the SAT or the ACT. We do not have a preference as to which one you take or which one you send, but you also see that italicized part there that says if submitted. Many of the schools in the United States right now are in this test optional space. Some of them have made permanent changes to that. Some have extended policies around that. There are a few schools that have started to go back to requiring testing. So again, as you think about your list, think about, do I have to send a test score? Do I not? We are a test optional institution. And a lot of times when I say that, people think I'm trying to trick them. And it's not. The optional piece is optional. If you send the test score, I will look at it along with the academic record that I have. If I don't, I'm just going to look at your academic record, which, to be honest, is probably a better measure of you as a student because it's measuring you throughout that entire high school experience as opposed to a test you may have got to take once or maybe twice in a very short amount of time. So again, it is about, and I love numbers, I love data. If you were to look at our pool, it's a little over half of our pool submits a test score, just under half does not. If you look at who's enrolled in the incoming class, it's just a little over half that have a test score and just under that don't. So the great thing is the applicant pool and our enrolled pool are pretty much a direct mirror of each other, which tells me that there's not really an advantage if you send a test score or not. So yeah, the academics, first thing that we look at. But then we're also going to be looking at these other pieces as well. And I'm going to go in a different order than this because I don't like this order. And also when I'm evaluating your application, the next thing I look at is what are you doing outside the classroom? Where are you spending your time, your energy? Don't have a set list of things that we expect. We also know, depending on where you're coming from in the world, there's different emphasis on how extracurriculars, what's available to you. Sometimes that's things at school. Sometimes that can be things in your community. That could be at-home responsibilities. But whenever I'm looking at these activities, I'm looking for depth, looking for impact, looking for engagement. But again, I don't have a set list of things that I expect from every single student. I want you to pursue the things that you are passionate about. And then when you sit down and fill out that application, I want you to brag on yourself. That's what it's going to feel like. We're going to ask you, we want to know all the things that you're doing outside the classroom. This is not a time to hold back. We really do want to know all the things that you have engaged in outside the classroom. Because again, I'm trying to see what sort of passions and interests from the things you're doing are you potentially going to bring to our campus. Letters of recommendation, we do ask for 3. One of those would be from a school counselor, if your school has a counselor, or it could potentially be some sort of advisor or principal, someone that kind of understands the nuances of your school and the curriculum that you are a part of. And then we will ask for 2 from teachers as well. And what we're hoping to glean from those, those folks interact with you on a daily basis. They can kind of give us a sense of the type of student you are in and outside the classroom, and they kind of give us a glimpse into who you are. We unfortunately do not have a chance to meet every single student that applies in our process, and so these recommendations really help us kind of understand the nuances of who you are. And then the essays, which I'm sure all of you are thrilled about, that you get to write college essays. So there's a couple different that you will see on the application. You will have that personal essay or that personal statement. That if you're using something like the Common Application, which is what a lot of students use because it's accepted at a variety of different schools, so it kind of makes the application process a little bit easier for you as opposed to just filling out separate applications. There's going to be this personal statement that goes to every school. And again, that's pretty short and sweet, but it allows you to, talk about one aspect of who you are. And again, it's a glimpse into who you are. You cannot tell me your whole life story there, but I'm hoping to learn something about you that I don't necessarily see anywhere else in that application. Then the short answer questions or these supplemental questions typically are additional things that an institution may ask, and they go specifically to that school. So for example, we have one short answer on there. We're going to be the only ones that see that answer. So you can actually be very, very specific to Vanderbilt because we're going to be the only ones that sort of read that. And my biggest advice on that is actually pretty simple. It's to follow the directions on that, which seems very obvious, but sometimes students are like, oh, I should write more than what it says, or I should, try to do something different than what they're asking for. There's a reason that schools are asking those questions. There's a reason sometimes they put word limits on those. But just know that you can be incredibly specific to those because they go directly to that institution. On the next slide, I think we're getting a little bit into the funding. Oh, just kidding. We're getting into application deadlines, all this fun stuff. So when you look at the US, we love to have lots of terms and lots of deadlines in this process. So just for Vanderbilt specifically, we have something called early decision, and we actually have 2 of those. And you may also, if you look at schools in the US, you will hear about early action as well. The big difference between those is sort of the binding component to it. So if you do an early decision program in the US, you are filling out this agreement that you will sign, a parent or guardian will sign, likely a school official will sign that says, hey, if admitted to your institution, I will attend. So you are kind of making that commitment to one institution through that early decision program, and it typically has that earlier deadline. What you see there for us is November 1st. Early action typically has an early deadline, but it does not have that binding component to it. So you will find out sooner, but you don't necessarily have to attend that institution if you're admitted into the early program. That's kind of the big difference between those two. And then just to make it more confusing, we have a second one in terms of early decision too, and there are a handful of schools that have these as well, and actually more schools in the US have been adding this. Same sort of binding component as early decision one, it's just a slightly different deadline. So it actually gives you an opportunity, potentially a little bit later in that application process, to still sort of make that commitment in early decision. You will see there for both of those, it's about a 6-week turnaround on that decision. You will typically get a yes or no decision there, but we also sometimes will defer students into the regular decision process, and we'll actually reconsider your application in that entirety with that whole group that has applied regular decision. Regular decision is something that's typically at every institution in the US. That is one that has no sort of binding component to it, just kind of a standard application deadline. And it does take a little bit longer for us to get back to you on that, and that is mostly based on the quantity of applications that we receive sort of for that application deadline. And then we do also have a merit scholarship deadline, because these deadlines were not enough. We threw in one more for you. So if you are looking for other funding options, and I'll talk a little bit more about sort of the Roby scholarship as well, but we actually have separate merit-based scholarships that are full tuition. They also come with a stipend as well, very similar to sort of the Roby, which is specifically for Finnish students. But for ours, you do have to apply separately for those scholarships. As a Finnish applicant, you will actually automatically be considered for the Roby scholarship. But we will just look at kind of the entire Finnish pool in that particular year. But if you also want to be considered for some of our other merit-based scholarships, you actually do have to apply for those separately, and that deadline is December 1st. So just again, kind of giving you an idea of sort of what that calendar looks like. And I think on the next slide, it even lay out the sort of other financial opportunities as well. So I know we mentioned at the beginning, but I'll kind of go back over to what the Roby scholarship really is about. So just so you all know sort of the history of that, we had a Finnish alum who came to Vanderbilt, had a fantastic experience, and was like, I would love to have more Finnish students on our campus, who actually gave us the funding for the scholarship, which basically will cover full tuition. And it is really focused on students that are applying to that College of Art and Science, which does tend to be the majority of students who are looking at Vanderbilt. That is the biggest sort of school that we have there. But it meets full tuition there. It also comes with a $5,000 stipend that you can use one summer for some sort of academic enrichment. That could be a study abroad program, that could be research, that could be maybe you're doing an internship and it's supplemental funding to help you do any of that. It does come with, I believe, up to a $1,500 travel stipend as well. But the great thing is, because of the financial aid that we have, if you have additional need above that, we will also meet that with Opportunity Vanderbilt, which is a commitment that we make to every single student, whether they're in the US or abroad, doesn't matter. Any student that we admit across the world, we're going to meet 100% of your need, and it's with no loans. So there's a lot of different financial assistance out there. One piece of that could be loans, where you're actually borrowing money to go towards your education. A little over a decade ago, we actually removed that from financial aid packages. So any of the aid that you get from us comes in the form of a need-based scholarship, could be a merit-based scholarship if you're getting that, or it could be some sort of on-campus work opportunity, but it is money that you never have to pay back when you graduate. So it's a huge commitment on the affordability side of things there. So again, the Roby could cover that tuition, but if you had need to cover housing, food, other costs, that's where the Opportunity Vanderbilt could come in and kind of stack on top of that particular scholarship. So again, there's going to be some financial documents that we will also ask for you in this process, so that our financial aid office can kind of evaluate what is your need And then how can we meet that 100% if we choose to admit you to Vanderbilt there? And then I think the last slide may just have some other ways to sort of stay, these are the scholarships that I mentioned earlier. So again, you kind of have those, in addition to the Roby, you have these sort of other designated scholarships that you can take a look at as well. Again, applying for free money is never a bad idea. So having your name in the hat for multiple things can be great as well. And I think that next slide has some other ways to stay connected with us. I'm hoping